Hello and welcome to my online public meeting for North Yorkshire Police. I'm Commissioner Zoe and I'll be chairing the meeting today. So let's turn to the agenda, and any apologies, and that's one from Scott Bissett. So there were no minutes from the last meeting, and generally what we do is we put them online onto my webpage so you'll be able to go at your leisure and watch the previous meetings. So if any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Right, let's go straight to the performance section. So I'm handing it over to you, Catherine, I believe, for this.
Yes, afternoon, Commissioner. Afternoon, everybody. So I will be taking us through the performance slides today. So if we could click on to the first slide, please. Oh, sorry, the next one.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So this shows data relating to our answering of emergency calls, so 999. So as you'll see in the top left, you can see the count of calls, and we work to what we call a service level agreement. So we seek to answer 90% of calls within 10 seconds. So we can see that, so what you won't see is the sort of the previous improvement, but anybody who's been on this meeting before will know that we have vastly improved this in North Yorkshire. So we continue to have increased volume of calls, yet our performance remains around 90% in terms of that service level agreement, which we're very happy with. And the average answer time for 999s has drastically improved since 2022. And we've broken it up there just underneath so you can see in terms of different time periods. So this is 1st of March 23 to the 29th of February 24 there, and you can see how quickly we're answering. But that top box shows you in February we were at 89, so we're just up and there around about 90%, much more consistently now, which I'm really happy about. If we could click on to the next slide, please.
Catherine, can I just ask a quick question? You know I'm always driving you to improve, and it is fantastic, the call answer times for 39s, but what are you doing to get it down even further?
So we are recruiting more people. So we had, I think, another 11 people hit, we call it the room, so the force control room, which is our hub where our call handlers and dispatchers work. We have new technology coming in, and that is helping us in terms of planning our workforce. So our people, when they have breaks, when they need to be there, what our demand is, and that's a really much more technological solution for us to understand our demand. So when we need our people to be in the seats, attached to the phones, to be answering. So lots in terms of recruitment and technology within the room. So we continue to try and improve and increase that performance, and really have the absolute assurance and confidence that we will consistently be answering 90% or more of our 999 calls within that 10-second time frame.
Thank you.
Okay, so the slide that you can see now deals with non-emergency calls. So that's what we would call a 101. So as you'll see there, a slight little change there in terms of performance. The bottom left bar chart shows that 75.55% have been answered in under 2 minutes during the previous month, and 87% have been answered in under 5 minutes, which hopefully for a non-emergency is we believe is way better than it used to be. Our average answer time at the moment, as you'll see in terms of what we call a service level agreement, again that performance within which we hope to, is 90% of calls answered within 120 seconds, so 2 minutes. Nationally this is likely to change to 3, but we are really happy with our performance there, reporting against 2 minutes. So we are looking at something which is very new, which is a recent addition called Queue Buster. So people may or may not know about this. So it's an additional technological process to our call handling process, which should hopefully improve customer satisfaction for those people who are sitting waiting on the line, by offering our callers an option to end their call at a specific point 1 minute in, and then receive a call back from our call handlers when their original call would have been answered. This allows the caller to go about their day without having to wait online. The system keeps their place in the queue, it works through to a call handler in order, and then when their place would have come had they remained waiting, we will call them back, just hopefully a little bit more convenient. It reduces the risk of callers being offered a lesser service through the 101, and we anticipate that the abandonment rate, so the people who choose that they don't want to wait, will actually reduce as a result of that option, because it's shown nationally with those other forces who use it to be an increase in satisfaction. I saw
Catherine,
a hand go up.
hand up.
Sorry,
It's
Commissioner.
Elliot's hands up. Elliot, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Commissioner, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder ahead of time here, Catherine, but you're absolutely right. Other forces have seen significant improvements in satisfaction from introducing that, and I was with a lot of chiefs last week who are doing that. The other thing that a lot of other forces do that we're doing as well will be the introduction of the triage desk, the switchboard, later on in the year as well. Again, that ability for us to identify risk and those ones that need escalating really quickly very early on. And that's a massive thing for us and a massive thing for the public.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Elliot, it is. And I'm absolutely delighted that we've got that coming in, which will make a really big difference, because I was going to ask you about that 23% abandonment rate. So it would definitely impact that for the better. You know, the other question I'm going to ask to you probably, Catherine, by now, and that is why has somebody had to wait 1 hour, 23 minutes on 101?
Yep, so this call came in the early hours of Sunday, the 11th of February. The caller made no selection when presented with an automated switchboard sort of option at the start. So they were routed through to our out of hours, which is then staffed by our call handlers in the control room around other demand and other calls that are coming in. So on this occasion, there was a delay. Obviously, our call handlers were dealing with other calls, 999s, but when they've been able to answer the call, it was disconnected. Lots of checks are then done to follow up. We want to make sure that we don't lose anything, and we are reviewing internal processes to see whether there's a more efficient way. And as the chief has said there, we will have that front line switchboard on so that we can quicker triage calls that are coming in to ensure that anything that is maybe a bit more urgent, but the caller's not sure whether they should ring 999 or 111, we pick those up and get them into the room. So every time we have a long wait or an abandonment, we do lots of checks and we call people back and we try and assess the risk. If we could move. Thank you. Okay, so this moves away from call handling to our physical response, or our type of response to calls. So this shows our response to calls that are graded as an immediate. So we think it's an emergency. So for urban areas, we aim to arrive within 15 minutes, and in rural areas, that's 20 minutes. We have a priority grade that we aim to then attend within an hour of receiving the call. So we assess that, the call handlers assess that, it gets reassessed with a little bit of system information. So there's a really good risk assessment that is undertaken to determine the grading within which we go. So we think an immediate is an emergency, and we are consistently achieving there, you'll see. So your green line and your black line, arrival within our target of 80% for all immediate grade assist incidents. And you'll see there the upwards trajectory in terms of rural immediate grades. We've done a lot of work. We continue to make changes to improve our performance. And Commissioner, I know we've talked about this and we mentioned it last time, but for anyone who wasn't online and didn't know, a lot of work has gone into this in terms of changing our shift times of certain officers, spreading time where officers go away to study, and lots of other things that they have to do in their time to make our availability of officers more consistent. So we are better meeting that peak demand that we understand, and we are moving our officers to some more forward deployment locations in rural areas, as we would call it, so we have a base from which to more consistently achieve that target of 80% target within attendance times for immediates. So the bottom left chart there with the orange and blue shows you incident volumes broken down by area of the force. The volumes shown show the districts, and they mirror the greatest footfall and population, and the volumes remain static over time when compared to our previous reporting period. And in the right, you'll see two tables which show the number of officers on average that we send to antisocial behaviour incidents, crime incidents, and public safety concern incidents. They're sort of particularly different types where we would want to see the breakdown of the average officers and the number of those incidents. So we know the difference over time.
Catherine, can I just ask you a question on the graph, please? Bottom left, there's one called blank and it has a 2 and a 10 by it. What does that mean?
Unfortunately, I'm afraid I don't know what blank means.
Okay. Well, maybe somebody can find out and come back to us while we're on there.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. So in terms of the next slide is looking at our crime levels. Okay. So you can see there the top graph, the blue squiggly line, is our 3-year crime trend. So that's all crimes committed in North Yorkshire between March 21 and February 24. So it shows a downward trend, which is really great, crime committed in North Yorkshire. Now, all crime has been lower than in previous years, obviously with the exception of COVID period, but North Yorkshire's thankfully has been at a greater lower rate, if that makes sense. So you'll see from the data presented, we have lower levels in that bottom right. We have a number of crimes broken down, and you will see the crime count, our rate per 1,000 population, and then the England and Wales rate per 1,000 population. So you'll see here that we have lower rates in all but one crime type than the rest of the UK per 1,000 population. So just of note, as I pointed out last time, incidents of violence, theft, robbery, burglary and drug are those that cause the most fear from what we believe among the public, and they are all significantly lower in North Yorkshire. So that's fantastic news. The left-hand 3 boxes stacked above each other show our crime recording integrity. So I'm really pleased that we recently received a rating of good from our Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire Services in respect of the integrity of our crime recording. We know that this is something that impacts on the confidence of the public, so I hope that the public will be reassured that we've received a good rating there, and you will see the percentages. Are there any questions in relation to the crime levels?
Well, I think Elliot would like to come in, please.
Just really briefly, Commissioner, like you have said to Catherine, you'll keep repeating something around one element. This for me is the big one. This makes North Yorkshire the safest place in England. And if you look at the bit that I want to draw your attention to is last summer. So the June, sort of May, June, July time, when we always see that crime going up in the summer months when it's busy. And you can see last year, that was significantly flattened. It was almost static across there, and then those reductions. What this means at the end of the day is fewer victims of crime. And so forgetting our outcomes, forgetting all the other stuff, if we got fewer victims of crime in the first place, that's exactly where we want to be. So I don't want to underplay this, because I think it is such a huge thing for this county. And every time I go speaking to people out on the street or in the community, sometimes they don't realise just how safe it is here compared to other forces. And I just wanted to hammer that point home just a little bit.
You're absolutely right, Elliot. I am really pleased to see this graph. I think it's fantastic. I really do. And I completely concur with everything that you're saying. And you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. That means there are less victims here in York and North Yorkshire, which is really good. Now, I do have one question, though, Catherine, and that is bicycle theft. So we seem to be above the average. So why is that, and what are we doing about it?
So just that's the one where we're marginally above. Potentially cities like York, where people thankfully like and can cycle a lot, means that we have a sort of urban connotation where we have a lot of people cycling. So more opportunity there. So neighbourhood teams focusing on prevention through locks, prevention through marking of cycles, and then really trying to understand hotspot areas where bicycles are stolen from, and really focusing on those with targeted patrols, CCTV to try and identify and prevent.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we can move on to the next slide, please. So this shows, like we say, we've got some crimes which are obviously of real interest to communities and cause a lot of fear and a lot of harm. So burglary and robbery. So as you can see there, in terms of burglary residential, the top graph there in the black line is thankfully since last summer a nice downward trend. So I can also see that the 3-year trend, and it is a downward trend which continues. And you'll see underneath there, we have what we call a resolved outcome rate. So that's where we solve that crime positively. And our resolved crime rate is higher than the national rate of 4.55 at 5.2. And you can see there the average investigation time for a burglary being 50 days. So for people who may think, well, why does it take so long? If we have forensic hits in terms of fingerprints or any fibres or DNA hits, then they can take a bit of time to get through, get assessed in terms of our CSI, and then get through to being solved. The bottom chart in blue is personal robbery. So again, 3-year trend. in the past month, you'll see that there is an increase in personal robbery. So I just want to reassure the public that, as you've already seen in the previous slides, in comparison to other forces nationally, the robbery rate in North Yorkshire remains really low. So we're reporting here on very small numbers. However, I do accept that there is an upward there. So we do experience peaks and troughs. With such low numbers, that can then look quite stark on a graph. So an upwards trend into spring is not unusual, and we saw this in the previous year comparison. Importantly, what we know is that in comparison to our most similar forces, we are still the lowest among the lowest two forces for robbery occurrences. So I just want to reassure anyone that sees this that we are absolutely focusing on robbery in North Yorkshire. We understand we understand the types of offences that we're talking here, and robbery can span quite a broad description. We understand that it increases. We scrutinise every occurrence. We're working hard to prevent any increase. And our overall positive outcome rate, so again, that sort of solved rate for robbery, is almost 15% in North Yorkshire, compared to almost nationally almost 7%, which was the last figure available at the end of September 23. So we're really pushing ahead in identifying those offenders, bringing them to justice.
Elliot, do you want to come in?
Just really quickly again, Commissioner, just on the robbery one, we had a really close look at this in our performance chief officers team meeting a couple of weeks ago, because we obviously a little bit of concern. The thing about this is, and I'm not decrying any of the offences, some of these we're still recording robbery, don't forget, where it's children stealing from each other, and I'm not decrying that can still be a huge impact, but this is not muggings in the street at knife point, and I just want to make that really clear. This rise is not down to anything like that. So you know, that is the kind of thing we're talking about here, theft of bikes and stuff between kids, which is not acceptable, and we still investigate, but it is not the serious end of violence.
Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that, Elliot. I do have one question about the burglary residential. Now, it is great news to see that we're still on a downward trend there, so that's brilliant. But the outcome rate is 5%. Now, I know that's above the national average, but it's still low, isn't it?
Yes. And sorry, continue.
Sorry, Catherine, you go first.
And obviously, attending every burglary, taking every opportunity to investigate is something that we're absolutely prioritising. As the Chief said, we've looked, and I've said, we've looked really at robbery, but we've also really scrutinising burglary. We have burglary specialists. We understand hotspots. We have some really good outcomes and some really good. As soon as any trend comes, we try very hard to sort of target those areas, and we have had some good outcomes. But I do accept, 5% may sound low, but we are working and focusing on trying to improve that outcome rate.
Thank you.
Okay, shall I move on to the next one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So the next slide, there we go, it looks at violent crime and vehicle crime. So the top graph there in black is violent crime. So you'll see that it continues to decrease in North Yorkshire, and that has actually in fact been a continued downward trend since summer 2022. So really good news. The bottom graph there in blue shows vehicle crime. And again, similarly to robbery, you'll see in spring there's a slight increase, generally linked to theft from unattended motor vehicles. We understand areas where this is happening. And again, in line with robbery and burglary, a real focus on that at the moment, while we see this upward trend in terms of paying particular attention to try and identify perpetrators, but also trying to prevent this through encouraging the locking of vehicles, the removal of valuables when unattended, and really trying to prevent and detect those. We've seen obviously this drop in occurrences since summer, but this increase again as we head into spring isn't necessarily unusual. And just to reassure, this is at virtually the same bar one level to the numbers we saw this time last year.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can move on to the next one now. So this now moves on to Section 136, mental health. So Section 136 is a section of the legislation relating to mental health, and that is the power that is given to police officers to detain people. So it's different from an arrest. It is a detention for the protection of a person who may be suffering a mental health episode, or prevention of others as a result of that mental health episode. So as you can see, there's been a lot of talk about this in the media, so people may be aware and very interested in this. this. The police are still responding to mental health related incidents, and we do still detain people under that Section 136 of the Mental Health Act. But now, however, in comparison to previously, it happens much less often. So anybody who was on the last meeting sees we've almost seen a halve in terms of the occurrences that we have attended in the period. So we have an initiative called Right Care, Right Person, which means that health professionals are more likely to attend than police. We work really closely with mental health care. In fact, we have them embedded with us here in the control room. But there are still times when it's necessary for police to attend, for example, where there may be some risk presented, and it's right and appropriate for the police to attend. So the geography of North Yorkshire is quite unique in that it's very remote, and it does mean that we can spend quite a long time on occasion dealing with these incidents, right and appropriately, where we may have to transport somebody to a place of safety. So we prefer not to take anybody who is undergoing a mental health episode into a custody suite. We rather take them to a place of safety, which is led by health professionals, and a much safer place and more appropriate place to detain somebody due to mental health as opposed to any crime. So in the past 2 months, like as I said, the number of occurrences of mental health episode where we've attended have halved, which is really good news. So you see the bottom table there indicating of all the 136 detentions made by police, how many were taken to health service places of safety versus police custody. And I'm pleased to say that, you know, that remains low at 4 in February versus 16. So TEWV is TUV, Tees Escombe Weir Valley. That's the health body, health authority who have those places of safety.
Catherine, can I ask a question about those that are put into custody? Because the numbers, although they're low, they're still being quite consistent, aren't they, from September, October and until now? And it really concerns me that, you know, a person that's having a mental health crisis is being put into custody. So I would like some information about those that were put into custody, why that happened. Was there no space in the mental health inpatient units? Were the 136 suites full? That sort of thing, because I think it's really important to understand more about this data, because it's the last place somebody really wants to be, and that North Yorkshire Police, either they don't want them in a custody suite because it's not the right place when you're having a mental health crisis.
So absolutely, I agree, and we consistently, as a force, we agree. We don't want anybody who is suffering a mental health episode to be in police custody. It's not the right place. We are not the specialists. There may be occasions there where a criminal offence has been occurred as well. Somebody may be wanted. There may be such a degree of I don't like to say the word violence because that's not the right word. If somebody is needing to be restrained, and yeah, of course, there may be times where there isn't a place, but that is much less frequent now. So some of these episodes can also involve a criminal offence.
True, thank you.
Okay, so if we can move on to the next one, please. Thank you. This looks at our investigative outcomes for all crimes. So you can see in the top box there with the blue line, you have something called CROMU. So that's an administrative department. So every crime that is to be finalised or with an outcome goes through lots of checking to make sure that we are recording it, that it's being closed, it's appropriately closed. So that goes through that team. And we did have last year quite a backlog in terms of that. So what you'll see in the blue line there at the top is how we have reduced the backlog in terms of administrative processes to close crimes and sort of claim that outcome as being finalised. We are on average now actually fewer by about 1,000 than shown here. So this data goes up to January, but we're now hovering around about the 3,000 in terms of administration with that team. So a drastic reduction. And what you'll see there in the bottom chart is that that kind of correlates in terms of the positive outcomes. So a continued upward trend there. So it's our rolling positive outcome rate. So at the end of December 2023, that was 15.4%, compared against a national figure of 10.6%. So that positive direction of travel correlating with our massive improvement in terms of our administrative backlog to make sure we're getting through and we're being able to show those justice outcomes.
Catherine, can I just ask a question? Because obviously I look at this very closely and, you know, it's great the fact that you've really been able to drastically reduce the backlogs. However, it started to rise up again. Now it's dropped back down to about 3,000, which I believe is about right, really. But how and why did it get to 4,000? So the last thing we want to see is an upward trend again, although it's noted that it has gone down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So I think it was at just over 3,000 this morning. We were hoping we would have hit the 3,000 mark. We didn't quite get there, but we're literally hovering just above it. Yeah, Commissioner, you're right. We did hover back up again. So there were a number of staffing issues, some sickness, some people being moved. So we've looked at the risk of that. We've moved in people. So appropriately using our staff. For example, if somebody is restricted in terms of one role, they can come in and use their expertise to assist with that. So it's about us continuing to make sure we've got sufficient well-trained staff in that CROMU department, as we call it, to ensure that that backlog and that bottleneck doesn't raise again. And it feels now like we've met a good level and a good consistency there. We are still trying to push it down a little bit further, though. I can see the chief's got his hand up.
Elliot.
Yeah, just really quickly for a little bit of confidence going forward into the future, Commissioner, we've commissioned a review, an end-to-end review of crime recording from the time it comes in to what goes on with it all the way through, and that piece of work is well advanced now. And I know I'm borrowing from the HMIC presentation later, but I just think it's a really important point to make here, because you're right, it has fluctuated. We have seen when we take people out, etc. This is what happens. So we want to make absolutely sure that our system and our process is right and is robust and resilient going forward. So just a bit of reassurance for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I move on to the next one, the next slide looks at force legitimacy. So particularly there around stop and search. So we know that this is a area that the public take a lot of interest in, rightly. We have the power to stop somebody, detain them of their liberty in order to search them. And we have really specific grounds against which we can do that. So this slide shows that in the last period from 1st of March 23 to the 29th of February 24, we carried out 3,053 stop searches. 2,404 of those were searches of the person and 649 were searches of the vehicle. So that power allows us to search persons and vehicles. 667 arrests resulted from these searches and 479 had a positive outcome. So a positive outcome means the thing that we knew we were searching for was found. So obviously the arrest rate is higher. So the arrest rate could be something to do with other than the search, not just necessarily the grounds for the search. It could be the behaviour somebody wanted or other things. So it's just to point out why there's a difference there. And every stop and search should be recorded on body-worn video. The person is given the opportunity to have a record of their search, and officers have to go through a specific set of information that they give to the person, because we know that through lots of research, if we explain and we give the grounds, we tell people why we're doing that, we tell them what the suspicion was, they are more likely to be accepting of that power being used, which we know is quite a big power really to be able to detain somebody. So we watch this. I chair a use of powers board. We scrutinise this very carefully because we want to make sure that we remain legitimate to the public of North Yorkshire in terms of our use of this power.
Mm. Just one comment from me actually, and concerning that 39 wasn't known about their gender. Sorry, about their age group. Sorry, am I reading this off?
Apologies. Yeah, age group. Yeah.
Age group,
so
yes.
we like I say, through the there's the same in terms of ethnicity. So we are really pushing officers to accurately record every single one where it's not stated, is scrutinised. We feed back to officers, and we are working on a downward trajectory in terms of every single age being recorded. Somebody may not state their age, we may not know, we may have to guess, but really ethnicity is what is defined, but obviously the age we need to know. Yeah. So we really scrutinise it. Like I say, I chair that board, and every single one we want to understand why. We feed back to officers. This is an area we watch very closely.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could move to the next slide, please. So this is a slide that viewers who watch regularly may have seen before. So this is the public confidence survey in England and Wales. So in the most recent crime survey of England and Wales, you'll see that North Yorkshire is in the top 10 for each question that are asked. We're top for public perception of our community understanding, public confidence, and second for perception of police dealing with community priorities and doing a good or excellent job. So this, as you can see at the bottom, there has been no data available since June 2023. So it's quite old, but it's the latest that we have. We're very proud of this. We want to see this going again in terms of the survey, which is a national survey that isn't controlled by ourselves, but we do look at our own confidence and satisfaction through local surveys, because clearly that's really important, again linked, as I said before, to legitimacy and the public's view of us. But very pleased still with that outcome we saw last summer.
Just to say, Catherine, I'm very pleased still. Absolutely fantastic. Always room to do better though,
Yeah.
but you know, it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. So this shows down sort of the breakdown in terms of staff and diversity. So we have a 38.1% female workforce, which is increasing from last time, and that is compared to a national rate at the end of 2023 of 34.7. So we are working in terms of all elements of diversity. We have a dedicated positive action team who work to try and attract people through recruitment. We understand the experience of our workforce, trying to retain them in the organisation, and a lot of work is going on to try and better understand through surveys of people's experience where we are, what the experience of people working in North Yorkshire is, to try and make it somewhere that people want to come and work, and then when they hear that they want to stay. So we currently also there, you'll see in the police staff, specials and volunteers, we have 79 special constables and we have fantastic 174 volunteers. Now they offer approximately, few figures, £500,000 worth of hours worked in a year. And we're really grateful to them, therefore, for the service that they give to our communities on a free voluntary basis, both special constables and volunteers. So that's fantastic. You'll see that our police officers are made up of 96.4% white officers. And again, like I said before, positive action, we are trying to increase this with a focus on attracting, retaining officers and staff. We're working quite heavily at the moment in terms of trying to understand that experience of officers of non-white ethnicity, to increase the representation and the cultural awareness of our workforce, working in conjunction with the National Police Race Action Plan. We see a huge benefit of our communities and our workforce of it being more representative in all types of diversity, because that's then more reflective of the communities we serve, and that then we know builds confidence and trust of the public.
Catherine, I have been asked an awful lot lately, especially from county councillors, Councillor Tim Krogan from the Selby area, that there's a real concern about PCSO numbers being drastically reduced and not replaced. Now, this is a question that was given to myself and Elliot at the Unison AGM last week. Elliot, can I bring you in, please? And can you answer that like you did do at the Unison meeting? Because I think there's an awful lot of concern out there within communities and PCSOs about recruitment. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you. Yeah, as I said at the Unison meeting, the PCSOs are an absolutely integral part of what our neighbourhood policing offer is. And that's, sorry, the offer, that's a very management term. Neighbourhood policing model for North Yorkshire is. I can speak on behalf of the new Chief Constable, because I know it's on public record that he is absolutely committed to building a really strong, cohesive neighbourhood policing model for North Yorkshire going forward. In relation to PCSOs specifically, as you'll have heard on that day, Commissioner, from our lead for HR, we are starting the recruitment process, I think she said at the end of April, when the adverts will go out, and we will be going from there. So there is, you know, I can't give any more reassurance than that. They are integral to what we're doing. We are going to be recruiting, and we place a huge value on the work that they do, as I know our communities do, and rightly so. They're highly visible. They're brilliant problem solvers. And then probably the only other thing to mention really would be that it won't stop there. We will be looking at things like the public safety officers as well, and how we can expand that going forward. You should have not just recognisable names in your community, but a recognisable face, and that's the neighbourhood policing model, and that will include response officers as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elliot. And just to say that, you know, the next question I get said to me is, well, will the new Chief Constable come and change all of this? Well, my answer is absolutely not. Tim Forber, who starts next week, is absolutely committed to neighbourhood policing. It was a very strong theme coming through the question sets in the Chief Constable recruitment that I asked. So just to give some reassurance around that too. Thanks very much. On to the next slide, Catherine. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll go on to the next slide, please. Okay, and that shows in terms of what we call head counts. It's again a bit of a management term there, isn't it? Head counts, number of people, FTE, full-time equivalent. So as we've just outlined there, what I was going to talk about here is that our PCSO numbers are currently lower than our establishment. So we've covered that and the reasons behind that. So I was going to just talk about the commitment that yourself has made, Commissioner, and the new Chief Constable making clear the ongoing commitment to community policing. So the budget target for full-time equivalent remains at 1645 in 23-24, and we're still tracking headcount closely. This slide basically shows that we're on track. We're on track to achieve both targets and potentially to exceed them. So workforce planning is really important, again, to make sure that our model, our structure, our staffing meets our demand and we don't fall behind. So we cast forward all the time to make sure that our numbers are right and that the number of people leaving means we're not left with gaps, so that we're recruiting to try and match.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, which is our last slide, which looks at sickness and absence. So you can see there in terms of top left and the ring, just a breakdown in terms of the difference between physical sickness and psychological reasons. The top four absence reasons: cold and flu. Unfortunately, that coronavirus is still there. Sickness, and then much lower there, stress at 6.78. So we know that national rates for sickness comparison isn't unfortunately possible. The national rate is only released once a year, and the last one was March 23, so it's a little bit of a long time ago to make a comparison. But anecdotally, because we talk with our neighbouring forces, we know that in this region we have the lowest sickness rate out of 4 or 5 in the last 4 out of 5 quarters regionally. So we do keep an eye on that. Again, so I've just come this morning from a performance meeting with one of my areas of command, and it's something we look at very closely. We're supporting officers back into work, looking at the, you know, what can people do, what can't they, what are the reasons, understanding, you know, if we need to look at hygiene, if there's anything particularly around stress with the job that police officers and police staff do, and have a really good welfare and well-being support for our workforce.
Great, thank you
and
very
that's
much,
the end
Catherine.
of my presentation.
Brilliant, thank you. Now we're running slightly over, and that's my fault, so I was asking lots of questions, but I do think they're really important questions to ask on behalf of the public. So Andrew, welcome to the online public meeting. It's your first appearance, and would you like to talk us through the thematic topic presentation of neighbourhood policing? Thank you.
I certainly will, Commissioner. Thank you. Good afternoon. Just wait for the first slide to land. So I'm Temporary Chief Inspector Andrew Godfrey, currently working in the Partnership Hub, and I've got a history of working in the MPT arena for the last 10 years. You're going to put the slide up fully, Elaine, and you can move on to the next one, please.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So in 2023-24, North Yorkshire Neighbourhood Policing Review. We based that around the College of Policing Neighbourhood Policing Guidelines, which have 7 pillars of neighbourhood policing, which you can see there in the blue boxes. And the NPCC, National Police Chiefs Council Performance Framework, was considered throughout the review. Other forces were consulted around best practice identified by the HMIC, and that included other forces that were deemed as good or outstanding in their neighbourhood policing delivery, including Suffolk, Lancashire, Humberside and Durham. It's recognised nationally that the provision of highly visible and locally connected neighbourhood policing teams is the foundation of local policing across the UK. Now, performance governance is being improved in North Yorkshire in line with the MPCC performance framework, which encompasses the 7 pillars, as you can see illustrated there. The 3 key pillars that we really want to deliver on and are delivering on is engaging communities, solving problems and targeting activity. And the next few slides, we review those key pillars. So if you just want to move the next slide on, please. So MPT performance monitoring, all MPT officers have performance meetings monthly with supervisors, and that includes obviously the officers' welfare as well. And then command chief inspectors hold team performance meetings with all MPT inspectors and their supervision teams to hold them to account for performance. And the chief inspector and inspectors attend the neighbourhood delivery meeting, which is a tactical meeting where force-wide MPT performance is discussed and teams are held to account for their performance in that area. And I'll go into that in some detail on the next slide. And that all feeds into the local policing board, which is held quarterly, and that's chaired by the assistant chief constable as the strategic lead for neighbourhood policing. If you want to move on to the next slide, please.
Can I just ask that any acronyms you just say in full, like NPT, Neighbourhood Policing Team?
Yes,
is that
sorry.
all right? Thank you.
I'll try and remember. So the neighbourhood delivery meeting, it's chaired by the superintendent of the partnership hub or myself as the deputy. And each of the 7 pillars of neighbourhood policing is reviewed individually as we go through the meeting. We use data and analytics to support the performance meeting. We use victim offender location information to identify vulnerabilities. So what we mean by that is data providing us with a top 10 in each command area of the top 10 victims, the top 10 offenders, the top 10 locations, so we can assist the local neighbourhood teams identifying where the key vulnerabilities are, and then whether we need a problem-solving plan in place for them in particular, and if not a problem-solving plan, then is it dealt with through partner agency work or in another forum. So we also review national local best practice and new ideas shared across all of the MPT teams across North Yorkshire to share that learning and make sure everyone's following best practice. And MPT officer training and development is discussed with the Neighbourhood Management Award, which is something that we're quite proud of. And we sort of led the way on the Neighbourhood Management Award, recognising that MPT is a specialist area. And various other forces have sort of come to speak to us about our Neighbourhood Management Award and have also done the same or looked to do their own in their own forces, which is good. We also reviewed MPT abstractions because we found that MPT abstractions were discussed and any issues raised against an abstraction policy. What we found is that MPT officers were being abstracted away from their daily business in their local commands and their local communities. And what we wanted to make sure is that it was recognised where they were abstracted, so we could monitor that and scrutinise it to make sure we've got the officers working in the areas that we need them. And I'm really proud to say that back in September 2023, when this first went live, we had 124 abstractions, which is quite high. In January, we had 16, and in February, there's 8. We can't always say that MPT officers won't be abstracted because, of course, we have to look at the risk of the force in other areas. But to bring the numbers down is making sure that we've got them key personnel working in their own communities, and that's really positive.
Andrew, can I just come in on that? I am really pleased to see that and hear it because it was having a real impact, wasn't it, on those neighbourhood policing teams and delivery of service there. So thank you.
Definitely. And the last part of the neighbourhood delivery meeting that I'll discuss now is a monthly problem solving award winner. So we've concentrated on problem solving this year. We've introduced SARA, the SARA model, and here we go. That's scanning, analysis, response. SARA, scanning, analysis, response and assessment, sorry. I knew you'd ask me. And that is something nationally is seen as best practice in relation to problem solving. And we've been delivering training in respect of that. And I'll come on to it a little bit more on the next slide. So if you want to move the slides on, please. So this table's already been sorry, not this one. So MPT teams engage with their communities, and I think community engagement in North Yorkshire is a real strength of our neighbourhood teams, and it has a direct impact on community confidence and understanding. What we can see here is that our MPT teams do engage with the public both face-to-face and online. Face-to-face, we have a community engagement log where all the officers come back in and log their community engagements at specified events, so we can monitor which communities are being visited and engaged with, and we can make sure that all of our communities have that service and have that access to the local teams. We also use North Yorkshire Community Messenger, which is an online system to interact with the community. And we had a real drive on that last year, and within the last year we've sort of upped membership by over 12,000. We now have over 20,000. I think on there it'll say 21. We're over 22,000 now people signed up to North Yorkshire Community Messenger, and that's a real drive. We've got volunteers working with the neighbourhood teams and sort of lots of new ideas of how we can drive that further forward. But the more people we get signed up, the better two-way dialogue we can have, because it has the ability to send surveys in local communities to find out how people feel about the service provided.
Andrew, can I just say, community messaging is absolutely fantastic. It's so important to get the word out there. It's a great tool to have as a resident. Can you just go through how a resident could actually sign up for community messaging while we're doing our online surgery?
Certainly, if you were to obviously search on Google, you would find North Yorkshire Community Messenger. There'll be a link on there that you can click through and sign up with your email. It doesn't ask for much details, but what it does do is allow you to receive alerts in your local area relevant to you, and you can actually choose. So if you were to live in York, you could choose which districts, which areas you wanted to receive alerts on. So you don't have to receive everything for all of North Yorkshire. You can make it quite bespoke to your own area, and you often get surveys asking you how you feel the police are delivering in your local area.
Thank you.
If you want to move on to the next slide, please. Sorry, that slide there just shows how we are increasing across the board the amount of sort of people that are signing up, because as I've said there, people can sign up themselves, or we have got volunteers going around local communities trying to get more people signed up, especially if they've got a local problem in a hotspot area. We want to really make sure that we're represented well by the public in that particular area. So this next slide is the one that was shown previously, and I talked here about community engagement being a real strength for North Yorkshire, and the benefits of community engagement, both face-to-face meetings and online. We obviously use Twitter and Facebook as well as North Yorkshire Community Messenger. I believe this has a real direct impact on community confidence and understanding, and they're the two areas I wanted to just pull out of that data. Albeit it's a year old, we are #1 in 43 forces for community understanding and confidence, and that's something we want to stay there, and we want to build on that. So that's really important for us as neighbourhood teams moving forward.
I suppose really, Andrew, my concern is that this is a year old, so how do you know that crime survey really reflects what's going on here in North Yorkshire?
We obviously, through North Yorkshire Community Messenger, we do run surveys, as we say, local surveys, and generally we get really positive feedback, and the neighbourhood teams are obviously quite connected with communities, and they receive that feedback from communities, and we believe that we are doing well in that sort of area. But it's something we are, constantly measuring ourselves against. Next slide, please. So the next slide talks about problem solving, one of the key three areas of the 7 core core areas of policing. So delivering problem solving training to the whole organisation supports the National Police Chiefs Council vision to become a problem orientated organisation. What I can say now, we've already trained 48%, so 887 of our police officers, and we've trained 447 of our police staff, which actually is 48% of them as well. And that training is ongoing as we speak in the SARA model, which I mentioned before, which stands for Scanning, Analysis, Response, Assessment. We've also started delivering to some of our partners, and an example of this is we delivered to a probation service in February 2024, 70 of the probation service. If we can get our partners in line using okay and au fait with using the SARA model, it enables us to work with our partners so much more professionally. So that was really, really positive, and the probation service are quite happy that we look at that elsewhere, delivering that out to many more of their staff. And that's something we would like to do with other partner agencies as well, because it will assist us, as I say, working together. HMIC provided really good feedback around the amount of problem-solving plans we had in place. They particularly liked the regular supervision reviews and oversight we now have of PSPs, problem-solving plans, with regular reviews carried out. And that's something in the neighbourhood delivery meeting that we bring up all the data and make sure that every problem-solving plan has had the reviews where they should have had. This means that the service to the public should be on point, because they're being reviewed by supervisors and professionally led. So problem solving plans ensure that the work of MPT and partners is targeted effectively where a problem is identified. And I've put there working together, and as I've said, that's where we need to work with partners. As we've said, the police can't do everything themselves. There's lots of different agencies that can add real benefit, and our neighbourhood team's essential, and they do work with lots of different agencies in the various different areas of North Yorkshire. We currently have 50 live problem solving plans across North Yorkshire, and the HMIC gave us really good feedback that that was around the right area, because I think you can saturate it and have too much and not be really prioritising the areas that need that bespoke sort of effort and service. So problem-solving tactical advisors also support the local officers and partners, making sure that problem-solving plans are well written with clear identified objectives. These are people who have had bespoke training in the writing of problem-solving plans, making sure that it's all pulled together, and they carry out the assessing of each problem-solving plan. So I move on then to all problem-solving plans now are scored to a set criteria, and they are centrally managed. So, and that is by the team within the partnership hub. And then the results we get from, I think there's 13 different areas, we can pick out where we might not be performing as well, and then we can make sure that the training's delivered bespoke to that area. And what I can say is that problem solving plans over the last year have improved well, 58%. We took a snapshot of 5 from the beginning of last year and 5 from this year, and we can say the score had risen from 60 to 95, which was a 58% rise. We do know there's room for further improvement, and that's what we're planning. There's plans in place to make sure that that further improvement continues, with the training being rolled out to every member of staff within North Yorkshire Police. So it's not just the police officers, police staff. We all understand the SARA model of problem solving, and we can become a problem orientated organisation. If you want to move to the next slide, please, Elaine. The next key area I'm going to talk about is targeted activity. So each MPT command review the top 10 victim offender location statistics for crime and antisocial behaviour, and that makes sure that the teams are focusing their efforts by concentrating on the most vulnerable. Obviously, we can look at statistics, but it's also the personal experiences of the local teams and their feedback from the community that all delivers and makes sure the MPTs can formulate their plans as to where they need to be targeting their resources. If a problem-solving plan is not required for a top 10 victim offender location, then the inspector needs to provide a rationale as to why not. Now, that could be that it's already being dealt with in a partner situation, or a partner might be leading on that because there's mental health involved, for instance. However, they do need to provide that rationale, and that's all documented so we can hold them to account for that. Where problem-solving plans are in place, any targeted patrols will be carefully considered with partner agencies and concentrated at optimum times within that hotspot area. Neighbourhood teams can bid for other police resources to support in solving community issues, and obviously they will work with local partners in order to do so. Neighbourhood teams publish their priorities for each MPT area on the North Yorkshire Police website, and this will need to be regularly updated, and that's part of the performance framework moving forward. There is currently work ongoing to develop ward profiles for 173 wards across North Yorkshire, and that will allow each ward to have bespoke information that we've sort of shared from council departments as well. And that data will be available to anyone who comes to work in that location. And out of that, we will be doing beat plans and patrol plans, which will be specific to each ward and really allow not just the neighbourhood teams who know their own area, but if we get some armed response or traffic coming into our area, then they can pick up the document and know straight away what are the issues, where do we need to focus in this area.
And can I just ask a quick question there,
Yep.
Andrew? And so the website that you're talking about getting updated and everything, will the ward profiles go onto the website as well about what's expected, or is that internally? And what's the time? And the other thing is, what's the time frame for all of this?
The ward profiles are more internal. However, the website is a single online home. It's a national sort of piece, and we are looking to move on to the next section, which will make it much more informative for the end user. So what we will be, we do display already what the priorities are for each neighbourhood policing area, but when we get the upgrade, which is likely to be towards the back end of this year, we will be able to display more information, and it will look more professional to the user. So hopefully that will see some real improvements in the website and the data available to the public.
Okay, thank you.
If you want to move to the next slide, please, Elaine. So to some more information on neighbourhood policing. So MPT staff are dedicated specialists in the field, and North Yorkshire Police was one of the first forces to recognise this, and all staff complete a bespoke neighbourhood management award, which provides vital knowledge for their role. As I said previously, the other forces came to us recognising this was good practice. HMIC recognised it was good practice, and therefore other forces are now looking at very similar. But I think it's recognition that MPT officers are valued and seen as specialists in their field. All MPT staff, neighbourhood policing team staff attend a yearly neighbourhood policing team conference, which actually was last week. Where guest speakers who are experts in their field share knowledge and best practice. So last year we concentrated on community engagement, and we looked at North Yorkshire Community Messenger, and really that was a focus of performance to try and raise the amount of people signed up to that. This year we looked at problem solving. The new chief arrived and gave his commitment, which was great for all the team to hear. And problem solving is something that this year we've really sort of driven, and I've already discussed the improvements we've made. We want to continue that. So it's a great opportunity to share some of the good practice that's been going on in North Yorkshire with the rest of the MPT teams, so we share best learning. And North Yorkshire Police are currently applying for a £1 million of government funding for use on serious violence and ASP. So that a plan is currently, well, it's been written and submitted to the Home Office, and we'll be using statistical data to highlight areas across the force that we will be targeting. And we've fed this obviously back to the Home Office and awaiting approval. It's a real opportunity to make a difference to local issues across the force, and extra patrols will be seen in key hotspot areas, and public consultation will take place, and part of that will be trying to engage with the public and driving forward sign-ups to North Yorkshire Community Messenger as well. So NYP are also currently working on the MPT performance framework and carrying out an assessment of current performance against national criteria. So this is a national MPT neighbourhood policing team criteria. Some forces took part in a trial, and it's now being rolled out to all forces. In future, it's very likely the HMIC will judge MPT performance against the criteria set of the performance framework. So this is a key focus for us over the next few months to drive the performance of the neighbourhood policing teams towards meeting all the performance criteria and improving the service that we provide even further. Next slide, please. So this slide demonstrates where our current MPT staff is, and as a result of the MPT review, the slight uplift that we had, as you can see there, we increased by 8 constables. You can see that +2 in Craven, 1 extra in Scarborough Rydale, and 5 extra in York. That was due to, we looked at some statistical data which was nationally used in other forces and seen as best practice around deprivation index, so the amount of hospitals, schools, and the nature of each ward to decide where your staff needed to be. And obviously that's why we needed to look at resourcing the staffing as can be seen there. I think it's fair to say the constables that you can see there are supported on the neighbourhood teams by school liaison officers, PCSOs, rural task force, and we also have really strong citizens in policing section who support neighbourhood policing. Now, I'll put a caveat on the numbers that I'm providing here because the numbers are regularly changing. So although it says 88 specials, it's dropped a little. I think it might be 79 now. And whilst we are really proud that some of the special constables are joining as police officers, it does make it hard in a competitive job market to keep the numbers of specials rising. But we also have 118 police cadets and 121 volunteers, which is really positive, and they do some fantastic work across the neighbourhood arena. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides after this are a visible sort of depiction of the MPT neighbourhood policing team vision. So driven by the 7 pillars of neighbourhood policing, and in particular the 3 areas I mentioned: engaging communities, problem solving, and targeting activity to deliver an exemplary service. And the proposed MPT vision for North Yorkshire highlights 3 key tasks of MPT working proactively: to tackle neighbourhood crime and ASB, to proactively target and disrupt offenders, and to identify and protect vulnerable victims. So the following slides, if you want to go to the next slide, Elaine. I'm not going to dwell on these for too long, and you might not be able to see them in great detail. So it talks about our mission and our vision down the sides. We've got the principles of neighbourhood policing, and then in the reddy colour down the middle, we've got the 3 key MPT priorities, and in the orange it displays what our outcomes will be. And if you want to move on to the next slide, Elaine. And then this next slide breaks down the MPT key tasks into further detail and shows really our commitment to what we expect our neighbourhood teams to be delivering in local areas. And that is me, unless there's any questions.
No, nothing further from me. Thank you very much for that. Catherine, I believe you've got some information for us from your last set of slides.
I do, Commissioner. Yes, so we had a slide where we showed the crime occurrence, the crime location in terms of districts, and there were 10 priority grades and 2 immediate grades that were shown as blank. So I've done some digging, and that could be where it's either occurred outside of North Yorkshire Police's force area, or where the exact location for it hasn't been determined. So it can be, we will identify a location, but and we'll have something recorded against it, but it might be where we don't exactly know where it's occurred. So we keep a watch on those, but they go down as blank.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. I'm just going to hand it over to Tamara to ask the 2 spotlight questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. So if I can just ask these 2 questions under the spotlight section, please. If I can come to you, Elliot, is that all right to respond to these?
Yes, I'll certainly try my best, but I'm mindful I'm an expert.
Lovely, thank you. The first one's in relation to Clare's Law, because I'm sure that many people will have seen the article on the BBC News regarding Clare's Law and North Yorkshire Police. So Clare's Law relates to the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, which allows people to request background checks on their partners. Freedom of Information requests found that North Yorkshire Police only released information in 34% of Clare's Law requests, and in the past 5 years have taken up to 280 days to respond to a request. So the question is, could you explain the article and the data used, and why did only 34% of requests receive information? Why is it taken up to 280 days to respond, and how many requests are answered within the 28-day limit?
Thanks, Mara. That's quite a tricky one with all that data, which I don't have to hand, so I'm not going to be able to answer that. Obviously, Clare's Law is a really significant piece of legislation, one that we do take very seriously. You'll see from our HMIC peel inspection the improvements that we've made with protecting vulnerable people, and particularly in relation to domestic abuse as well. We are still one of the best in the country for action we take at domestic abuse. So I'm really proud of what we do there. In relation to the stats and the figures that your person has asked there around that question, I'm afraid I'll have to come back to you with exactly why that is what it is. I just don't have that information to hand today, but I will get the office to look into that. They'll come back to you with an answer on that, which you can then publish.
Okay, thank you. And the second question to the spotlight section is regarding the Angelini inquiry. So this is the independent inquiry which is being undertaken into how an off-duty Metropolitan Police officer was able to abduct and murder a member of the public. This is to ensure that the victim's family and the public get a full explanation to this tragic and harrowing murder, most notably how he could remain a police officer despite his misogyny, aggression and misconduct. So the question is, Elliot, part 1 of the report was published on the 29th of February this year. And what are North Yorkshire Police doing to address the recommendations in this report?
Thanks. You'll be pleased to know we didn't sit on our hands waiting for this report to come out. Actually, if you think about other reports that were published last year in relation to, so the Baroness Casey report, which came out as well, addressing what were the issues that she found in the Metropolitan Police, but which clearly had ramifications and implications for forces all up and down the country. So we set up a gold group, which to remove the jargon from that basically means a senior officer leads that with a clear strategy about how we're going to approach it and a set of actions and recommendations. Now, the Angelini report, I think there are 16 recommendations and something like 25 conclusions on top of that, and that is just part 1. There are some there that forces cannot do independently. So, for example, there's one in there around home visits, that prospective police officers get home visits. That's one that the National Police Chiefs Council is looking at nationally, working with the College of Policing and others. So some of those are completely sort of out of our hands while we sort of develop them. Others where we are looking at our vetting, for example, very, very closely. And I'm pretty proud, actually, that vetting can be a bit of can slow down our recruitment processes here in North Yorkshire, but it is absolutely right that we do it the right way. So vetting is another one we're looking at really closely. Vetting fails. North Yorkshire has been one of the first forces, in fact, the pilot force to, I forget the names, Op Prism, I think it was, where we looked at washed everybody in our force through the police national database on a regular basis, because this will pick up things that are happening that might have happened elsewhere in the country as well. So all of these things, we really take it seriously. We're not sitting on our hands. There'll be ongoing work, and we will engage with the NPCC going forward into the second part, which will be looking at culture as well. So basically a huge amount of work. Again, it might be worthy of something in the future to have a spotlight on exactly where we're going with this, because it is without a doubt the most one of the most heinous, awful and despicable crimes that has happened, and it has set policing back years. Now, I work with fantastic, brilliant officers day in, day out, full of integrity, honesty, and this sets everybody in a bad light. But it doesn't mean to say that just because there are one or two bad apples, we'll accept that. You know, the other bit I do want to talk about very quickly is internally, we've obviously got an anonymous reporting line, which we use and we publicise. But you may be aware that recently Crime Stoppers set up an anti-corruption line, and I'm not allowed to give you the figures around that, but there was actually quite a big uptake. I'm not talking about North Yorkshire, I'm talking about across the country, a big uptake from the public around that anti-corruption line, and forces will be getting a report around that. And if we get any of those, again, we will take them absolutely seriously. We've invested in our professional standards team. There are more detectives in there now than ever. There are more people in our professional standards team than our department than ever before. And again, we will not rest. We will not rest. We won't accept any of this kind of behaviour that we've seen played out in the press recently with other people. And I shall leave it there before I get into trouble.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tamara, and thank you to Elliot too. Right, we'll go on to the third party report section. We're going to focus on the HMIC FRS Peel inspection report, which has been published.
Thank you. I'll just wait for the slides to come up. Thanks, Elaine. Thank you. If you go on to the next slide then, please, Elaine. Commissioner, thank you. So first and foremost, I want to say on record a huge thank you to everybody here in North Yorkshire Police, an immense effort for the work that's been done over the past 12 months, because it is people like Andy that's been on, like Catherine, like Elaine that's working the slides, and thousands of other people that have put in the effort behind what you're going to see here today. And under normal circumstances, my deputy, Scott Bissett, would be here to talk through it because it's his area. So I feel like I'm stealing his thunder, but he's otherwise engaged today. So just looking at this, I just want to talk you through. There are 10 areas here. We are graded on 9, as you can see. The first one there, it was what we call our VSA, our Victim Service Assessment, which is around providing service to victims of crime. But that's always a really good indicator. Now, you can see from this graph the areas that are assessed. The kind of the sort of elliptical shape there is 2022, and then the square shape, rectangle shape rather, is 2023. And that's important because, well, for several reasons, because I wanted to show you that comparison and show the public that comparison of where we were and where we are. Now, you will recall in 2022, we had an inspection by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary's Fire and Rescue Service, HMIC FRS, and it was not very good at all. We had some causes of concern. We had plenty of requires improvements and inadequates, and it was really not a reflection for me of the enormous work that was going on here day in and day out. And that was because we were just not on the right track with how we were doing this. To shift that dial, we put in place what was a huge improvement plan, one that was monitored really closely by senior officers, by our chief officer team, and of course answering into yourself, Commissioner, so that you can see the progress that was being made and satisfy yourself that the force was turning the corner that it needed to. So I'm going to just start briefly from left to right. So I'll start with the crime data integrity. Now, as Catherine said earlier on, that's good. It isn't just good, it is 0.1% away from being outstanding. So it's the top end of good. It is really, really, you know, the why this is important for me is this is about legitimacy again, and trust and confidence in policing. Are we recording crimes properly? Are we processing them properly? Are we recording all crime? And this tells to me that we definitely are. We're doing a very good job and almost an outstanding job with that. So we're really pleased with that. And again, although we are just a whisker away from outstanding, I'm really pleased. The second bit there, treating the public with fairness and respect. We were good last time and we're good this time. Again, across all of these, we have got 11 AFIs, areas for improvement. So there is work to do. I do want to just say this is not a stop. We're not going, oh, pat ourselves on the back. We're now got 5 goods and 4 adequates. We're happy. This force does not aspire to mediocrity. We do not aspire to be adequate. We aspire to be outstanding, and not just in our response to the inspectorate that come and inspect us, but in everything we do. So that one there, tackling treating the public with fairness and respect was good. It remains good. I'm really pleased with the work that's been done around stop and search, around use of force, and a host of other things, including the strategic IAG, which is amazing. And I would urge any members of the public who are watching to become involved in strategic IAG or the local IAG as well. They're very, very good, and it gives you a good opportunity to link with the force. The next one then, preventing crime and antisocial behaviour and reducing vulnerability. So again, we were adequate. We are now good in that area. Again, that's really pleasing to see, because we know that, as you saw with the graph earlier on around performance, having crime not happening in the first place is our ultimate goal. That's what we want. We don't want crime happening. Responding to the public has gone up from requires improvement to adequate, and that's a journey. You've seen we've played that out so many times here. It's still improving. Day by day we're improving, and I'm really pleased that that continues on that journey as well. Investigating crime requires improvement has gone up to adequate. I want to give you some context there. Every other force has been downgraded apart from us. We have moved up. So although it's adequate, we still aspire to better things. We just want to put that in context. We are doing really well. And the public need to understand that actually, if we get there quick, we answer the phone, we get there quick, and we'll investigate your crime. And those are the 3 big things. The next one is protecting vulnerable people. And now you will look at that and you say, we've gone from requires improvement to good. That is a huge leap, a huge effort, massive investment in safeguarding, lots of extra money into safeguarding. Thank you, Commissioner. Lots of extra people into safeguarding, and absolutely right. So these are the people who are going to deal with domestic abuse, deal with child abuse. These are the most vulnerable people, and right that's at least good. The next one, managing offenders and suspects, adequate up to good. Again, really, really good leap for us. And that's not just our most serious offenders that we know we talk about quite often, but this is how we manage all of our suspects for every crime. We've got a much better focus on them than we ever have had before. Reducing the amount of time people are released under investigation or on bail, and getting that investigation done, because we know the quicker we can investigate something, the better the outcome. Building, supporting and protecting the workforce, again up from requires improvement to adequate, but again we're not resting there. We know that there's more to be done around well-being, more to be done around our people and how they feel. So again, not resting on our laurels, and I'll come on to that in a minute. And then finally, leadership and force management has gone from inadequate to adequate. We've got much better governance and systems in place now. We've got much better accountability, having those conversations day in, day out. So I'm really pleased with where those have gone, and I think that's a really good illustration. So you can see If you see our appeal inspection report, we're right down the centre around good and adequates the whole way through, and that's stable. You know, we have been, I don't want to say this out loud because it is a journey, but actually in this round of appeal inspections, I think you'll go a long way to try and find another force as good as we are. Let's put it that way. So thank you, Elaine. If you could move on to the next one, unless there's any questions, Commissioner, on that slide.
No questions. I'll just comment at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Next slide then, please. Thank you. So that's just a really quick one. So as you can see there, cause of concern in 2022, which we closed, I think earlier this year, actually, that was finally closed. Last time, 18 areas for improvement, this time 11, which we're working on as we speak, and then 4 areas this time of promising practice, which I'll come on to at the end. Thank you, Elaine. So now I'm just going to go through the very quickly the areas for improvement that have been identified in that appeal report. Now, to say that the stuff on the left is what the area for improvement is, stuff on the right is the improvement activity. It's not. It's a really quick snapshot. We got given a early view of this report when we had what we call our hot debrief following the inspection, and we knew at that point some areas we would need to focus on. So since that time, we have been pushing on. We have not sat there waiting for a report to come out and tell us what we already knew. Been working really hard. So improve the recording of antisocial behaviour. Now, what the inspectorate found there, Commissioner, was that actually whilst we're recording crime very well, at times we're missing in that some ASB. We're missing some antisocial behaviour that we should be recording, as well as other crimes. So Op Crystal, so as I've talked about that, that's going to address that as well, but there's still a huge amount of data literacy work going on as well. Improved recording of use of force, particularly handcuffs for stop and search. ACC Clark spoke about this earlier on and how we do scrutinise it. There's one thing around a recording issue that we had that we've found since then that we are now doing better, but this is an educational piece. Starting in April, we're rolling out a brand new safety, public and officer safety training piece of work, which will look at these sort of areas like stop and search, when to handcuff somebody and when not to, because what we found was actually there were times when officers were using handcuffs to detain someone that they actually didn't need to do that. So that is being picked up, and as is written there as well, it's being looked at in monthly performance meetings through the scrutiny. It says the force should continue to improve the speed it answers 999 calls. I won't play that out. We've talked about that at length, and a huge amount of investment. Again, thanks to the Commissioner, we've put huge amounts of resource and money into that control room, and it is getting better and better. The force should continue to improve its initial triage. So we have something called Thrive Plus. Now, Thrive is a mnemonic. It stands for threat, harm, risk, investigation, vulnerability, and I think evidence. I think I'm going to say at the very end there just to check. It's now well embedded in the force control room. And going forward, as we've talked about, we're going to have that switchboard, that triage function in the control room as well. So that will really improve that. But Thrive Plus is really pushing that one on. And then the last one on this is the force doesn't consistently achieve appropriate outcomes for victims. Well, we know that that's a huge thing for us. We know that our outcomes are better than most other forces nationally, but it is still not good enough. We still want better, and we need to get consistent outcomes. And that's what Op Crystal is going to help us address. Alongside that, we're looking at bringing in that case file progression team, which I know you're aware of, Commissioner, which will help free up officer hours to achieve better investigation standards. Thanks, Elaine. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. The force needs to make sure it assesses all the needs of victims. Now, this was a big one for us because early last year, we didn't have this in place. We didn't have the data. We couldn't capture it. I'm really convinced, as when we were talking to HMIC as well, if this had been in place, the work we've been doing, had it been in place for another 2 or 3 months, this area for improvement would not be here, because we knew we were on that trajectory, but they just needed to see it sustained. You can see there, the figures are really good. And when we talk about that VWCM, victim and witness contact module completed 88% of the time. I think when we first started that, it was something like about 35 or 40%. So everything has gone up across the board. victim personal statements, etc. So we're really pleased, and I'm absolutely convinced that that area for improvement is going to be written off in the next month or so. It's really, really good work. The PDRs, effective professional development reviews, as it says there, the new PDR module is going to be introduced into the system very soon. It was delayed, actually. It should have been done, I think, last year, but we had to delay it for IT reasons. This is really going to help, but it's about understanding why people are going to leave. But alongside that, we also have, as it says underneath there, the Say to Stay pilot, which has been completed. That allows people to click a button if they're kind of, are you thinking of leaving us moment, and we can have those conversations with them. Fully understand demand and manage demand effectively, and develop business change processes and improve workforce engagement. So we're doing a lot around workforce engagement at the moment. We've had our wellbeing survey that's been completed. We've had a police productivity survey as well. So we've got a lot of data which we are working through. And alongside that, the wellbeing, the force wellbeing meeting is chaired by, at the moment, it's the chief and the deputy chief fire rescue service officer as well, deputy chief fire officer. So a huge amount's been done around personal wellbeing. I have to say, we are stealing with pride, borrowing with pride. Actually, we're police officers, we don't steal. We borrow with pride from fire and rescue service because they've got some really good stuff. So that's where collaboration really does work well. The force needs to better understand its demand so it can manage it more effectively. Mobile technology is being led by the ICT team, but actually the other side of that demand is we've done our first demand modelling around detectives early last year. We've done some work with process evolution around our response model. We will keep doing that on a regular basis. The issue for North Yorkshire was that hadn't been carried out for about 4 or 5 years. It will now be done regularly, so we do understand our demand. All of that will feature in the next force management statement as well. And then the force needs to develop its organisational change processes. So the change process is difficult at times. We have a lot going on at any one time, either local or national change. But again, that review of that change toolkit is taking place now, and we'll do much better force-wide communication and actually education. I know that we've done some master classes for our senior team as well. You're expecting police officers, operational officers to step up into senior roles without any business acumen effectively. So we're now giving them that from this force, but there's not many forces do that. So thank you. On to the next slide, which I think might be the last one. And then the promising practice. So it says the force is focused on reducing vulnerability in rural areas. We have hugely. We continue to progress that with the stuff we're doing around fraud as well. So we're really pleased with that. Building confidence to report serious sexual assault. Tilly's story, that was a very moving piece, which I won't go into here, but had a huge impact on officers. Development of the service directory, which is being seen as promising practice and best practice now. Other forces are coming to see what we do with that. And then the final one, reviewing the fitness test requirements for specialist posts. Now, we were lucky enough to secure, with a lot of badgering, the College of Policing have given us in North Yorkshire the pilot for fitness testing for specialist posts to try and attract more people in and retain more people into those hard to fill posts as well. Commissioner, that's a real whirlwind and whistle-stop tour of our HMIC thing. But again, I just want to put on record my thanks to everybody in North Yorkshire Police for the huge amount of work that's gone into this, everybody who's led it and everybody who's been involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elliot. I have to say, and I have put this on record already, that there has been the most phenomenal amount of work and improvements done at North Yorkshire Police. I'd like to say thank you on behalf of myself and the office as well, that all the hard work, the great transformation, please, the improvements that have been made. I'm absolutely delighted. So many congratulations. However, you're right, there is still more to do, and you'd expect that from me as well, wouldn't you, Elliot, on Absolutely. Your road to outstanding. Absolutely. But I am genuinely absolutely thrilled and delighted. So very well done. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And apologies for that interruption as well earlier too. Right, okay, let's moving on to questions. So we've got a lot here, and I know that we are all running out of time slightly today. So I'm going to whiz through them, and I do like to ask all these questions because I think it's really important. So the first couple of questions are for Bridget and Helen, and they're about the proposed motorway service area, and basically asking, you know, are North Yorkshire Police content to continue to have no objections to this development?
So I've read the questions, Commissioner. Thank you. I'll try and keep the answers brief, but answer them. So firstly, it says what's been put in place to protect the village. So as we would with any new development, we will factor that into our response plans and into our neighbourhood policing plans, because again, we don't want anything to become a crime hotspot to suddenly raise crime anywhere. So it will feature in response plans going forward. They always do. The second bit is around I think the designing out crime element there. We can't compel any developer to submit a secure by design application. We just can't. However, we really do encourage them and encourage developers to work with us to design them out. At the end of the day, it comes back to, I'll keep banging on about this, but that we don't want crime happening. We don't want police to have to respond to it quickly. We don't want to have to investigate it brilliantly. We'd rather it just not happen in the first place. So there's not really a huge amount else I can say about that other than we will continue to work with developers to encourage them into that, but we will factor any new development into our response and neighbourhood plans going forward.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please. All right, Howard, Northallerton. It's about a firearms licence. I sent my firearms renewal in several weeks before Christmas as it expired on the 14th of January, along with the online payment. I did not get a visit from the FEO till the 7th of Feb, and I've still not received my firearms licence 2 weeks after the visit and 5 weeks after the expiry without any update or explanation. Does the Chief Constable consider this acceptable performance for a service that is paid for by the customer? And what reassurance can be given that that service will improve? So
firstly, no. I would rather that people were able to submit an application, etc., and their renewal and have it done really quickly. There are a couple of things at play here. So firstly, your firearms licence money doesn't cover the entire cost of the team. So when it's a service that is paid for by the customer, it isn't. We still have to put in a huge amount of resource on top of that. We have been unfortunately running with some vacancies over the past few months in that team, which has helped then led to a bit of a backlog here and there. And when that happens, our priority has to be looking at the first and foremost, the ones where we have to revoke firearm certificates, because if somebody has done something wrong, somebody is a risk, that the most important thing for me is the protection of the public. And therefore the direction I've given to my officers and staff working in there is that's what they have to focus on first and foremost. We cannot allow firearms to be in the hands of somebody who is a risk. That's the top priority. Then we will prioritise those people with renewals, because the people with renewals, we want them to keep enjoying their use of firearms, etc., for their enjoyment, for their sport, or for use in pest control, for example. And then we will look at the new ones. The reassurance I will give you coming in is it's not lost on me. I don't think it's acceptable to have to wait that long. You're absolutely right, but we do understand. I would ask you to understand that there sometimes are backlogs in these kind of things. It's a small comfort. We are better than pretty much every other force, but it's still small comfort when you are waiting that long. So I've asked that it's looked into. In this case in particular, will be looked into as well. But just take comfort from the fact that we are looking to get those vacancies filled really quickly so that we can start to get to the bottom of that. Thanks, Elliot. I just want to come in off the back of that, because I have had a couple of complaints after Christmas about this. And when we did look into it, that those they were recruiting into, those positions. But is there an issue with vetting? Is there an issue with filling those positions? What's been done about it? Because we're now in March, aren't we? Yeah, so sometimes, well, vetting, as I said earlier on, it's so important to get vetting right. We have to get it right. So it necessarily takes a little bit of time. We were recruiting into them. I'll find out, Commissioner, for you for the exact status of that at the moment. But the trouble is, even if we've got a full complement of people now, they're working to try and get that log jam and that backlog. And as I say, I'm sure the public will understand the most important thing for me at the moment is, while I want people to enjoy them for leisure and for pest control, I must take them out of the hands of people where there's a risk, and that's where I have to concentrate my efforts on to start off with.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, next question, please. So, James, Skelton neighbourhood policing issues. Skelton is currently being subjected to a group of children running around the village in the early evening, about 1900 hours, 7 o'clock, knocking on doors and ringing doorbells. Do the police ever have a presence in the village, and does a neighbourhood watch officer exist?
Well, the MPT were asked about this, so thanks for sight of the question, because the neighbourhood policing team were asked. They are aware of the antisocial behaviour issues in Skelton, and the PCSO and the PC have spent some evenings already patrolling the areas affected. So they've identified a number of youths involved. All have been visited and all put on the antisocial behaviour process, which includes engaging with their parents. So they are on the radar. And again, what we're trying to do is stop this tipping over into serious criminality, because that's not what we want for anybody involved in it. So a patrol plan has been put in place. It's still in place. It's got targeted activity going on. And I'll check on the neighbourhood watch officer, because I think that that might be a local PCSO might do that, but I will check on that as well. But I know that the presence in Skelton has been noticed by a number of residents and members of the parish council. The local PCSO has also visited the school to highlight the antisocial behaviour. We will continue, of course we will. Antisocial behaviour it's very upsetting, it's very annoying. It's the thing that upsets the people the most, to be honest with you, because it can really affect your quality of life. We're aware of it. We are dealing with it, Commissioner.
Thank you. Right, next question. Wendy, Tony and Alistair for Little Smeaton, and it's regarding burglaries. They're very concerned about a spate of burglaries and attempted burglaries within Little Smeaton and Kirk Smeaton. They've been carried out over the last few months, and many in daylight. And there's also incidents of fly tipping. Despite all the incidents being reported by residents, the CCTV footage supplied were very concerned that police do not appear to be taking this seriously, and there doesn't seem to be any visible police presence throughout the area. Is there a dedicated team of police officers, detectives investigating and making use of the CCTV and positive lines of inquiry? And also, what is North Yorkshire Police doing to protect the residents of Little Smeaton and reduce the crime here?
Commissioner, this comes back to, I refer back to what I talked about in our HMIC thing a moment ago around victims, witnesses, people being informed. It's one of the most important things we can do, and clearly I think this is a bit of a breakdown in that, because in a nutshell, as soon as the crime trend came, as soon as we recognised what was going on, we put a dedicated plan in place, a dedicated operation in place, run along the corridor, including Smeaton areas as well, working with our intelligence teams, working with other forces. I've got to be a little bit careful about what I do say. What I can tell you is that we did have a vehicle stopped, that 4 people were arrested, charged and remanded in custody over it. I can't go into any more than that on it. What we do have now, though, is a detective allocated specifically to the offences, who is working with another force to secure prosecution for the offences that you're talking about. So I think, in my opinion on this, is we're probably doing a great deal. The thing that's let us down here is we have not told the public what we're doing about it, and the victims potentially about what we're doing about it. So please take, you've seen the fact that our burglaries have dropped. Burglary and what we call home invasion is a horrible thing to have to experience. It really, really is. We take them so seriously. And our resolution rate is getting better, and much better. But again, we would rather they didn't happen. So we'll continue the patrols. We will continue to gather that evidence. But I will tell you that 4 people are spending time at His Majesty's pleasure at the moment, waiting for a trial.
Right, thank you very much. Right, next question. Derek from Scarborough, and this is about pavement parking. Now, Elliot, I do get this actually quite a lot from residents. I've had it from Craven area and also Moulton area too. So why do police actively support the parking on pavements, even though the highway code is crystal clear? If a driver believes it's not safe to park entirely on the road, the solution is not to park on the pavement, even if it is the only partially on the pavement. Let's see, why do the police believe pedestrians should be treated with contempt? Why do the police themselves fail to park safely instead of blocking a path? Are they so unfit they cannot walk?
Well, I'll speak for myself on that one, probably yes, but most of my officers, the answer is no. So just dealing with the police side of it first, I can't condone them parking on pavements, but at times in an emergency incident, for example, they will pull out and get out of the car and just not dump the car, but they will park where is expeditious to get to the incident that they're dealing with. And of course, you might not think they're dealing with something, an emergency, but you don't know what that officer is dealing with. If it's just haphazardly parked, then again, we will take that up. You're quite welcome for you to take the registration number and let us know, and we will look at what's happened there with that officer who's done it. In relation to parking, I think we've had a question or two about this in the past anyway, Commissioner. There's very little police can do about parking. Now, I know there's probably some questions coming up later on with something else where this is not meant to sound like a flippant response, but we have to prioritise our resources, and parking on pavements as much of it is a bit ASB at times, antisocial behaviour at times. It's not ideal, but where we do spot it, I know officers speak to someone and say, move your car. But if it's not forming if it's not constituting an unlawful obstruction of the highway, there's not a huge amount that police are going to be able to do about it. Again, though, if you do spot it, some of the local authorities have got responsibility for parking in certain areas as well. You can report if you're getting those parking issues. They will come and have a look at it. It isn't great when you have someone that's, for example, like a wheelchair user or a parent with a pushchair, and they have to go into the main road around a car. It's not good. It's not safe. And if we do spot that and we do see it and we're there, we'll deal with it. But if you called us about it, the chances are we're not going to come out to that. We are dealing with other incidents. It's not what you want to hear, I know, but that's about the best I can give you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I think there's an awful lot about how we work with our council stakeholders, but to the onus on drivers as well about being respectful where they park, and always remembering that a lot of people do need to use the pavement. Like you say, mums with prams have been there many times. Disabled users as well. I think it's really important that we all take a little bit of thought where we're parking too. Thank you. Right, next question, please. Scarborough. Now, there's one on speeding and one on racing. So Tony and Carol, they're basically talking about boy and girl racers driving at very high speeds around Marine Drive. And the next one is about residents of Hackness Road, Moor Lane, Newby. They call it a rap run very early in the morning. Can you help with this, please?
So in relation to the first one, I'm really sorry to hear that. We do something which we call Operation Custom, which targets we used to call it boy racers years ago, but it's not. It's antisocial behaviour using a car. That's what it is. It causes a lot of noise. It is dangerous. We know we've seen horrendous collisions in other force areas as well involving it. So it's not something we just ignore. We do take it seriously. I'm sorry that is still going on. I have made our roads policing team aware, and our neighbourhood policing teams are aware of it. We do use something that it's called Section 59 warnings, which if somebody's using their car for that, we can give them a warning and effectively potentially confiscate their car from them. So they do take that quite seriously, because some of them, it's their pride and joy. So we will look very, very closely at that one going forward, and keep us posted. It isn't something you should have to put up with, and you're absolutely right. we don't want to see that inevitable serious accident, that serious collision, because that's something we want to avoid too. So we won't wait, we will be on it. In relation to the speeding one, highways, unfortunately they're highways rather than police, but they're the people that will deal with speed restrictions and speed signs. Those rat runs, as you call them, I'm aware. We've probably all used them at some time in our lives to beat traffic, but when people are doing it 50, 60 miles an hour early in the morning, it is hugely dangerous. So I would urge you, there's two things you can do. Firstly, contact highways to have a look at that and raise it with them, but again, raise it as a community rather than on your own if you're able to, because you'll carry more weight with more voices. And secondly, the speed management protocol, you can contact us through that. And again, we have what's called the Strategic Road Safety Partnerships, chaired by the police, but also with Fire and Rescue Service, with highways, with local authorities, and we can have a look at that as well. You won't be the only one, but if you can work it through highways and then work it through the speed management protocol, I will make sure that it goes to ACC Fox, who chairs the Strategic Road Safety Partnership as well.
Thank you. Right, next questions, please. Michael from Great Ayton is about officers' social media. Does North Yorkshire Police have a policy on the use of social media by officers and staff? If so, is it available to the public?
I think all our policies are available to the public. We don't, we'll certainly dig that one out for you, Commissioner, so that you are able to make that available to Michael. Okay. So yeah, we do. We are quite strict on it. We've some officers who abuse it find themselves in trouble. Quite rightly, you will have seen not just this force, others where people are using social media and in chat groups to share, terrible stuff, and they get themselves into trouble there. For those who step outside the policy and step outside the rules, it's really clear. We try and say to people, don't talk about something that you wouldn't talk about in front of the chief. Basically, don't tweet something you wouldn't say in front of the chief or in a room of people you don't know, because that's not what we're about. We are apolitical, we are impartial, and if we start being partial, then we cross that line. Happy to share that policy with you, and if there's a particular incident that you're talking about here, then if it's something you wish to make a complaint about, you absolutely can make a complaint about it, and it will be looked into.
Thank you. Thanks. Next question. William from Skelton, and this is about gender identities. So if a male who identifies as a woman commits a crime, how is that crime recorded? Is it recorded as being a crime committed by a man and a woman? And what is North Yorkshire Police policy on this? So
our policy is, I think, the same as the national policy. The crime will be recorded in relation to the gender that the person identifies as. And it's as simple as that. So our policy follows national guidance on it. So if you are a woman, if you're a man who now identifies as a woman and you've identified as a woman, that crime will be recorded against you as a woman. Thank you. Next question, please.
Mayor from Scarborough, and this is about hate crimes in light of Scarborough's growing diversity, particularly with the influx of new hires from the NHS and Coventry Uni, actively recruiting students with diverse backgrounds, alongside new diverse businesses emerging in Scarborough. What specific plans or initiative does the North Yorkshire Police have in place to combat hate crimes and ensure the safety of diverse communities in that area?
So I'm really, you'll be unsurprised to hear, I'm very passionate about this. We have done a huge amount of work in relation to hate crime. I set up the Strategic Independent Advisory Group, the SIAG as we call it, and it's a very diverse group. We examine all kinds of stuff, including hate crime trends, and where we've seen rises, and we have seen some rises. We know in particular in relation to race and ethnicity, which is just, I think the bit about hate crime that really upsets most people and upsets me is it's about targeting someone just for being who they are, which is just so, it's so against everything we believe in and everything I believe in. We've done a huge amount of work. We've got a hate crime team looking into it. I will urge, as I said earlier on, if you want to join an independent advisory group, please do so. You've got one in Scarborough, one in York, one in Harrogate, and one in wider County Hambleton, I think. So there are 4 that you can join. If we spot any trends in it, if for example, we see in Scarborough, as you'll talk about, if we started to see a rise in race-related hate in Scarborough, we would run a very quick and very specific operation looking at why that was occurring and what we can do. The big thing for me is this is about getting people to come forward and report hate crime. That is the key. We want people to feel confident enough. If you come forward, we will protect you. We will look after you. You will be believed. You will be treated with respect and with dignity. And we will do all we can, I promise you, to look into that crime, investigate it thoroughly, and bring offenders to justice. It's hateful that somebody can be targeted for who they are.
Thank you. Next question. Anthony from Scarborough, antisocial behaviour. So after years of enduring antisocial behaviour on our green in Albemarle Crescent, we were promised drinking in public would be reviewed and probably made a criminal offence in certain areas. Has this policy been dropped? It's the only solution we can see stopping this.
Yeah, so I'm led to believe that we had a North Yorkshire Council, I think, had I think it's called a public space protection order in place, but that expired at the end of 2023. So they are currently doing another consultation around whether there should be a new one. So we're hoping for a full ban in the town centre. That's exactly what we want, is a full ban in the town centre, which I think would cover that area as well. So I would just say to Anthony and to friends, family, colleagues, everybody there, actually get involved. Go onto the North Yorkshire Council website, engage with that consultation, report the issues there as well. You know, it's not a huge amount of reporting for police at the moment, so we'll look at it if we start getting reports of antisocial behaviour. But again, we've got an op for everything. This one's called Op Culture. We look into all that behaviour, and it's been escalated to our priority tasking for all departments this week, actually, not just for neighbourhood policing teams, so for all departments. But please get involved, because we would support that.
Thank you. Next question. So Helen from Pickering, it's about road safety. There seems to be a general disregard of speeding restrictions within Pickering, especially on the A170 and the A169. This is an area where there are no safe crossing places. There's also an issue of vehicles, again, parking on pavements, so making it really difficult for pedestrians to negotiate around the vehicles. And she's very concerned about the number of people using the pavements as cycleways. Not so much if the bikes are ridden safely, but most are not. And they come from behind with no warning whatsoever, far too fast and dangerous.
Yeah, so thank you. We've got a number of safety camera, sort of where we put the safety camera vans in and around the A170 and 169 in Pickering, including one at the junction of the 170 and Outgang Lane. So across the 4 sites within central Pickering itself, we visited, I think, 87 times throughout 2023. And you'd be pleased to know we've had a total of 645 offences. So 571 of those were within speed awareness course criteria, so just over, but there will have been ones that are far over, which have then gone on to have points as well as the fine. So we'll continue to do that. We've got summer deployment worked out and coming up. This will feature in that. We've had previous sort of concerns entered into the speed management protocol, actually, for Outgang Road, all of which have resulted in community speed watch outcomes. There is a really good community speed watch group within Pickering, and they'll be able to deploy as well. So there's lots that's going on. Again, it does feature for us in our strategic road safety partnership. These are areas we look at regularly. In relation to people using the pavements as cycleways, that's a really difficult one. I suspect that because the cyclists feel that the traffic is coming, quickly, and they don't feel safe, they'll go on the paths as well, and that's not acceptable. But again, we have to look at where we're going to deploy, what resources we're going to deploy to where. And I'll just say, if it keeps happening, we can report it through to the local neighbourhood policing team, who will visit and take action. But please let us know, and feed into your local neighbourhood policing team. They will listen to you, because again, it's antisocial. If you've got parents, mothers, fathers leading their kids along those paths and people charging along on a push bike, does need dealing with. So yes.
Thank you. Right, next question. So this is a question from County Councillor Andrew Brown, and it's about speed cameras. So what has been done? Sorry, I'll start that again. What has been the outcome of the review into introducing fixed and average speed cameras into North Yorkshire? Are we going to be able to effectively police hotspots where speeding happens 24 hours a day in our county without fixed and average speed cameras? And why do we remain one of only 2 counties in the whole country who don't utilise them?
So the outcome of the review into introducing fixed and average speed cameras, I think it's back with us, and I'm led to believe, I haven't had an update on this one from the ACC in all fairness, but that was a piece of work that's commissioned through your office, which was brilliant. So that will be coming to the Strategic Road Safety Partnership as well to figure out, and then we'll work with partners on what happens with that. Are we going to be able to effectively police hotspots where speeding happens 24 hours a day? Do you know what we do? We do work like the safety camera vans actually can work in the dark, but again, it comes on volume of traffic. If there's 1 or 2 cars at the night time, there's very little point in us putting one out. So, but I do understand what you're saying around that. Why do we remain one of only 2 counties in the whole country who don't utilise them? There are more than that. There's other counties that have got them and then turned them off because it costs a lot of money to run them. They're not cheap to do. However, if you've got the right solution for North Yorkshire, I'm fairly certain that it'll be a really good thing, but it has to be the right solution. I don't want to preempt the outcome of that review, Commissioner, which I'm sure you wouldn't want me to do.
No. So, Councillor Brown, I apologise. It has taken a little bit longer to get this review back from Newcastle University, but we have just got it back and we're just analysing and looking through it now, and we'll be able to share that data very soon with our partners as well. So thank you very much. Next question. So Annette from Scarborough, and this is about gender identities. I want to know what women and girls are. I want to know that women and girls are fully protected and that the 5 Pelian principles are upheld. Can you answer the following? So I don't intend on reading them all out, but Elliot, would you be able to go through them very quickly, because we are so over time at the moment?
Yeah, Commissioner, in effect, as I said earlier on, we record people based on the gender identity they have. Do we have adequate single-sex toilets and change? Yeah, I don't. This always flabbergasts me that people think that they're going to get attacked in a toilet. It's nuts. But no, we have them. But we also have, kind of everybody has a toilet at home that people can use, and it doesn't matter what sex you are. We have those as well. Do you commit upholding freedom of thought and freedom of expression? We do. Of course, freedom of thought, freedom of expression is ingrained into the Human Rights Act. We protect that. Police, and I can go into the rest if you want, Commissioner, but there's so many there.
I think it might be that we get back to you, Annette, if that's all right, with the answers to your questions, because we are running out of time and I want to get through everybody's. So on to the next one, please. So Jack from Middleton Tyres, and it's about police priorities. No one could sensitively argue that the inappropriate speed is okay in the civilian operated speed vans. Bear witness to this, but should speeding be priority 1 for our police? What of the spread of drugs among our young people? Much more difficult and dangerous to our police than dealing with these criminals. Right, okay, so, you've got the gist of this. So
really quickly, Commissioner, It's not an either or. It's not priority 1 for us. It's a priority for us because we have 6,000 miles of roads. We want to reduce the 40 people roughly who lose their lives on our roads every year. That's a family that is devastated, and we want to stop that. But it's not an either or. We tackle drugs. We've got a great anti-county lines operation running, great organised crime unit, and other stuff that I cannot talk about on here. It is not an either or. We definitely do this as well.
Yeah, and there has been a huge amount done on county lines, and you've got some fantastic results, haven't you?
Yes,
That's great.
it's a scourge. Yeah, he's right.
Thank you. Right, next question. James from Yarm. Why is it necessary for the acting chief constable to create a video apologising to the LGBTQ plus community? I want to know exactly what's he apologising.
Well, we were one of quite a large number of forces that did this, and the video says what I was apologising for exactly, which is during the 60s, 70s and 80s in particular, the police across the country used legislation that was in place to effectively out gay men, ruin people's lives. They used the legislation proactively rather than passively. And I was apologising for that. It's all in the video, Commissioner. I'm sure people are aware of that anyway.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Dave from New York, and it's about 3 9s. I act in a police liaison capacity for the residents of St Paul's Square, York. Would you please clarify the police advice on by the police? They go on to say they've had a number of incidents. I think you can read the rest of it. Yeah. Can you advise? Thank you.
Yes. So call when it's an emergency, when a crime is in progress, when someone suspected of a crime is nearby, when there is a danger to life, when violence is being used or threatened. Those are the kind of things that you should be using for 999 calls, and not we've had people phoning up 999 because McDonald's won't serve them, or because they've been thrown out of a nightclub for their dancing. I mean, how bad was their dancing? I have no idea, but these are the kind of things you shouldn't be calling 999 for. So when it's an emergency, crime in progress, suspect, danger to life or violence, those are the kind of things you should use 999 for. Please don't hesitate to ring 999 though. If you do think, don't be thinking, oh, I don't want to bother the police. If it's not an emergency, then clearly we're calling 101.
Right, next question. Beverly from Richmond, and it's about training. Right, following a report in the wake of the Sarah Everard case, and in response to other high-profile cases where police officers have broken the code of behaviour towards women and girls, I was surprised to hear that there's no compulsory training for police officers in England. As individual forces are able to determine their own levels of training, I'd like to know what North Yorkshire offers its personnel. What training of officers did the officers receive? How much training is face-to-face? If summer training, is it online? And how does North Yorkshire Police monitor officers to ensure they're adhering to the training they have received?
I'm assuming this is about training at the very start of somebody's career, if that's what they're talking about, if that's what you mean. So there is no set, here is what every force gets. What there is a College of Policing curriculum, a little bit like the educational curriculum that is put out, and here's what you should be looking at. So every force has got guidelines. You need to cover these bits, and these are the learning objectives you need to cover within them. Every force gets that from the College of Policing. We're no different. We get that training, we build our own training packages, and we quality assess it, check it with the College of Policing, etc., and then we deliver it. So some of it is face-to-face. Most of it is face-to-face for our officers who are new in service. They get weeks and weeks and weeks of training before they even get out there to start with a tutor. Going on from that, some training is then online as people get more out into operational business, because it's harder to pull everyone together in one place. But we still do that. We still op Crystal, I talked about earlier, classes of 20, 30, 40 people brought together to do that. We do blended learning, so some of it's online, some of it is they have to read. How do we monitor to make sure they're adhering to it? Well, generally, it's around our policies and about law for officers that are going out there. They've got to adhere to the law. They've got to adhere to those policies. They have monthly one-to-ones. There are team performance meetings, and it's monitored all the way through the organisation. So occasionally people get it wrong, because we all make mistakes. Where it's an honest mistake, people get more training or advice. Where somebody does something deliberately wrong, we deal with them accordingly, as you'll have seen in the media.
Thank you, Beverly. I think what we'll do is we'll also send you a copy of my Violence Against Women and Girls strategy too, to be able to have a read through, but please come back to me if you have any further questions. Thank you. Next question. So Jacob from York, and it's about cyclists. Why are the police not stopping cyclists without a light? They are causing such a big risk to themselves and innocent drivers.
So again, it's not an either or. If we do spot somebody and we're driving along and or whatever, and we see a cyclist without a light, we will stop, because it is a risk to themselves more than the innocent drivers. They're generally always going to come off worse. So we do stop them. But again, it comes back to what our priorities are. You know, we're not going to have roving patrols of police officers looking for cyclists, because we've got burglars, robberies, child abuse, you know, all sorts of other stuff we have to prioritise too. Where we see them, we stop them.
Thank you. Gail from York, Foxwood. I'd like to know why we don't see police walking around neighbourhoods like they used to. And we often had 2 police walking by a house, and it's quite reassuring to know that they are just walking and just surveying the area, as there are possible hotspots for crime.
So we do get out on foot. They do. PCSOs in particular, as you know, are out and about on foot, but police officers too do foot patrol. But of course, if you're not there to see them at that moment, it's really hard. So unless somebody is walking around 1 or 2 streets, a la Dixon of Dock Green, which we're not doing these days, it's really hard. But they do go out and about. And for those of you who are in North Allerton, on Thursday, you will see me out and about in the high street as well in my uniform.
So we all need to go and say hello to Elliot.
Please do.
Okay, right. Are there any more questions? I think we've come to the end of them now. Oh no, we've got Gwen, of course, from York. Hello, Gwen. So we heard 6 months ago that a senior police officer had been suspended and the police conduct was investigating. Are the hapless ratepayers paying this individual full salary to sit at home, and how long is this going to go on for?
Commissioner, thank you. I can't go into individual cases with this. At the end of the day, we conduct investigations as expeditiously as we possibly can, and we are very aware that suspension is a serious thing for the officer involved in it, obviously, but we're also aware of the burden to the taxpayer, which is why we do progress them as quickly as we can. I cannot go into this particular one for obvious reasons, but just rest assured that it does feature. Anybody who's suspended has to be reviewed every single month. And every single month we look at making sure that we're making the best use and that they have to continue on suspension rather than coming in.
Right, I really do think that's the last question. I think it is. Okay, so that's the end of the meeting. I'd like to, seeing as though it's the last of the online public meetings for the police force, for me, well, my time in Commissioner, so I'd just like to say some thank yous to everybody that's contributed and who's watched the online public meetings. I hope you feel that these have given you some really good information. You've seen very clearly how I scrutinise both chiefs in public domain, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of all the scrutiny that goes on behind the scenes too. I'm delighted. I want to say a big thank you for all these great questions. 25 today. I think that's the record. Absolutely fantastic. And I always take all your questions, even if they're difficult ones, we always take them. I think that's just so important. So you could have your say, because that's your part of this too. So the next online public meeting is for the fire service. That's on the 25th of April. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching and taking part. Have a lovely afternoon, and we'll see you in April. Thank you.